Well, howdy. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to handle your in the mountains. If you buy remote mountain property in Western North Carolina, eventually you're going to have to answer one very glamorous, yet very important question. What are you going to do with your poop? Well, the woodland creatures can go wherever they want, but according to the county, you cannot. So if you don't want to flush resale value down the drain, and we are almost done with the poop jokes, by the way, stick around. We're going to talk septic systems, composting toilets, privies, outhouses, drip systems, pump systems, and greywater systems. All the ways that people handle waste on mountain property around Asheville and Western North Carolina. Because at some point, and this is true, you may find yourself staring down an inspector from the county named Gary. And I'll tell you something, Gary does not care about your homesteading dreams. Gary does not like shower water and creeks. He's obsessed with it. All right, well, let's get to it, because it gets complicated in the mountains. Today, we're talking about 7 ways that people get done on remote mountain property in Western North Carolina. Before we get into the actual toilet part, we have to talk about wastewater. Because even if you never flush a toilet, you're still going to take showers or wash dishes or brush your teeth and maybe do some laundry. That water has to go somewhere. And in Buncombe County, for instance, if you are not on city sewer, you generally need an approved wastewater plan for all of that, completely aside from your septic system. Even if you have a composting toilet or an incinerating toilet, the county still wants a plan for the rest of your wastewater. One of the big questions people have is greywater. That's water from sinks, showers, laundry, and dishwashing, okay? A lot of people assume that they can just run that out into the woods somewhere, especially if they're using something that's biodegradable, like Dr. Bronner's. Well, sometimes they can in some counties. Sometimes they absolutely cannot. In Buncombe County, for instance, you really want to ask environmental health before you assume you can discharge greywater into any part of your land. Once you're talking about a full-time house, they care a lot more. Now, let's get into the 7 ways people usually deal with the actual toilet side of things. First is conventional septic. This is the normal version a lot of people hope for. Wastewater goes into a septic tank, then into a drainage field underground where the soil filters it naturally. This is usually the cheapest, easiest, and most desirable setup if the property supports it. In Buncombe County, this is what most people are hoping for because it's typically the least complicated thing that you can get a permit for on a full-time house. A conventional system for a typical house is often somewhere around $8,000 to $15,000, though steeper sites and larger homes can push that higher. Next, let's talk about pump systems. It's another form of septic. Sometimes the only good area is uphill from the house or further away than gravity wants to cooperate with. That's where pump systems can come in. These are common on mountain lots where the best drainage field area is not downhill from the home site. They work well, but they add pumps, controls, alarms, electricity, and more maintenance. So around Buncombe County, these often end up somewhere in the mid-teens to low 20s, depending on how complicated the site is, and they can go up from there. Drip systems are another one. So drip systems are one of the most common alternative systems on steep mountain property, and technology has come a long way here. Instead of one concentrated drainage field, treated wastewater gets distributed slowly through tubing spread over like a large area. These are often used when the land is steep, the soil is shallow, or there's just not enough room for a conventional drainage field. They can work really well, but this is where costs can jump fast. In Western North Carolina, drip systems can easily run $25,000 to $50,000 or more. Next is mound systems. So a mound system is used when basically the soil on the site is no good for septic. They bring in engineered fill and create an above-ground mound where the drainage field can work properly. These are often used on wet sites, shallow soils, or places where natural soil is just too poor to filter properly. They can absolutely save a property, but they are visible, engineered, and more expensive. In Buncombe County, these can easily land in the $15,000 to $30,000 range, depending on the amount of fill and the site work required. Next, let's talk about composting toilets. A lot of people looking at a remote mountain property love the idea of a composting toilet. I do too. And honestly, they can be great. They use very little water, they fit a remote lifestyle well, and they reduce the amount of wastewater you're creating. In Buncombe County, composting toilets are allowed in some situations, but they still usually require an approved plan for the rest of your wastewater, like sinks, showers, and laundry. So these can absolutely be a part of the solution, but they are not always a total replacement for septic. Let's talk now about privies and outhouses. Of course, the polite word is privy, right? The appellation word is outhouse. These can still work for camps, hunting land, seasonal cabins, and some very simple properties. But Buncombe County is not going to let you build a full-time house and solve the whole problem with a outhouse. It's just not. There are setback rules, permitting rules, and construction standards, and the county will want to know what happens to the rest of the wastewater too. So complications can arise. Finally, we have incinerating toilets. These burn waste into ash. They can work well in remote situations where water is limited or septic is difficult. But they are expensive. They use a lot of electricity, and fuel, and they still don't eliminate the need for a wastewater plan for everything else. Most people are not putting one of these in because it's the easiest option. They usually do it because the land is difficult, or maybe the house is very remote. They're trying to avoid a much bigger septic problem, or they're environmentally conscious. So here's the bigger point. Just because land can technically support some kind of wastewater system does not mean it's the right property for you, okay? If it depends on a $50,000 drip system, a 1,000-foot well, a huge retaining wall, a massive driveway, and power lines from half a mile away, that cheap piece of land just may not be cheap in the long run, okay? You are not just asking, can I make this work? You're asking, do I want to make this work? What's life going to look like here? And remember, when it comes to mountain land, roads, wells, septic, power, and everything else, keep it simple, y'all. Quick notes. Septic rules, composting toilets, privies, greywater systems, and wastewater setups vary by county, and you should always verify with environmental health, septic installers, engineers, soil scientists, and the appropriate local officials during due diligence, okay? I'll put some helpful links below if you want to go any deeper in any of this. And if you have a property you're trying to figure out, go ahead and drop it in the comments. Happy to look at it. And if you want more videos on buying land, homesteading, living in Western North Carolina in general, then go ahead and subscribe.